If your literature review sounds like author A said this, then author B said that, you're just writing a book report. It's the fastest way to get your paper rejected. Here are 7 silent mistakes destroying your research. Mistake 1. Themes without synthesis. One of the most overlooked literature review mistakes is believing that using headings automatically creates a thematic literature review. Many students divide their chapter into headings and subheadings and assume they are writing thematically. However, inside each heading, they simply summarize one article after another without connecting the studies. This creates what is often called an annotated bibliography rather than a true literature review. The focus shifts from the theme to individual authors, making the review descriptive instead of analytical. Readers finish the section knowing what each researcher found, but they cannot identify the overall pattern, debate, or direction of the literature. A true thematic synthesis goes far beyond grouping articles under the same heading. Each theme should integrate evidence from multiple studies and explain how the literature collectively develops understanding of a specific concept. Instead of discussing one article at a time, compare findings, evaluate similarities and differences, identify recurring trends, explain contradictory evidence, and show how different perspectives contribute to the same topic. Your discussion should revolve around concepts, variables, theories, and research patterns, not around individual authors. The theme becomes the central focus, while the studies provide supporting evidence. Mistake 2. Missing the foundational studies. Many students believe their literature review should only include the newest articles. Because of this, they unintentionally leave out the landmark, seminal, or foundational studies that established the field in the first place. They assume older publications are outdated simply because of their publication date. In reality, many theories, conceptual models, frameworks, and widely accepted definitions still originate from classic studies published many years ago. Ignoring these papers removes the historical and theoretical foundation that supports the rest of the literature. A strong literature review shows readers where important ideas first began before explaining how later researchers expanded, challenged, or refined those ideas. Seminal studies often introduce influential theories, key constructs, major concepts, or research models that continue to shape current research. Including these studies demonstrates that the researcher understands the intellectual development of the field instead of examining recent findings in isolation. Mistake 3. Forgetting how the literature has evolved. While some students ignore classic studies, others make the opposite mistake by relying almost entirely on older research. They build their literature review around influential publications but fail to include current literature, recent evidence, or new developments. As a result, the literature review reflects what researchers knew years ago rather than what is currently understood about the topic. A high-quality literature review demonstrates this evolution of knowledge. It compares foundational studies with recent publications to explain how understanding has changed over time. Current research may confirm earlier findings, challenge existing theories, introduce new variables, or identify emerging trends that did not exist before. By combining seminal literature with up-to-date studies, the review presents a balanced picture of both the historical foundation and the current direction of the field. Mistake 4. Summarizing instead of synthesizing. Perhaps the most common mistake in literature reviews is confusing summary with synthesis. Many students believe the purpose of a literature review is simply to describe what each researcher found. The chapter becomes a long sequence of statements such as, Author A found this, followed by, Author B reported this, and then, Author C concluded something different. Although every study may be accurately summarized, the literature review never explains how these studies relate to one another. It remains descriptive instead of analytical. The purpose of a literature review is not to repeat previous research but to synthesize existing knowledge. Synthesis means bringing multiple studies together to identify relationships, recurring findings, common themes, conflicting evidence, theoretical similarities, methodological differences, and overall research trends. It also involves critical analysis, where the researcher evaluates strengths, weaknesses, inconsistencies, and gaps across the literature instead of accepting every study equally. Mistake 5. Hiding the research gap. Many students spend pages discussing previous studies but never clearly explain why another study is still needed. They assume readers will naturally identify the missing areas after reading dozens of article summaries. Unfortunately, readers rarely make those connections on their own. If the literature review ends without clearly identifying a research gap, the purpose and originality of the new study become unclear. Identifying the research gap requires more than stating that more research is needed. It involves examining the literature to identify unanswered questions, conflicting findings, under-researched populations, methodological limitations, contextual gaps, theoretical gaps, or inconsistent evidence. The gap should emerge logically from the critical analysis of previous studies. By the end of the literature review, readers should clearly understand what remains unknown, why that gap is important, and how the current research intends to address it. Mistake 6. Losing the logical flow. Even when students include strong sources and useful information, the literature review can still become ineffective if it lacks a logical structure. One section may discuss theory, then suddenly shift to methodology, return to theory again, introduce unrelated findings, and finally mention the research gap. A strong literature review follows a clear organizational structure that guides readers from one idea to the next. Whether the review is organized thematically, chronologically, conceptually, or methodologically, every section should connect naturally with the following one. Transitions should explain why the discussion moves from one theme to another, while each paragraph should contribute to the overall academic argument. The chapter should gradually move from foundational concepts and theoretical frameworks to empirical evidence, critical synthesis, unresolved issues, and finally the research gap. Mistake 7. Including everything instead of staying focused. Another mistake students often make unconsciously is collecting every article related to the general topic instead of selecting studies that directly support their research problem, research objectives, and research questions. Since they spend so much time searching databases, they feel every article deserves a place in the literature review. This leads to long sections filled with background information that may be interesting but contributes very little to the actual purpose of the study. Every paragraph in a literature review should have a clear connection to the research focus. Every theory, concept, variable, framework, or empirical study should help explain the problem being investigated or provide evidence relevant to the research objectives. If a study does not contribute to understanding the research question, it becomes unnecessary literature regardless of how interesting it may be. I've attached several videos in the description below where you can learn how to write an effective literature review and, more importantly, how to avoid each of these mistakes while writing your own.